The Chinese vessel is ready to conduct its research operations. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News here on TV1, bringing you the news from the news desk. I am Sandro Satyajit. Before we go into your news in detail, first let's take a look at your headlines. Chinese vessel prepares to begin research in the Sea of Sri Lanka amidst protests from India. NMRA representatives board the ship. 37 Indian fishermen arrested for fishing in Sri Lankan waters. AKD stresses on the need for a non-aligned foreign policy. Signs of a change in the top management of NMRA amidst mounting allegations. South Africa wins Rugby World Cup 2023.
World Cup champions, they stand alone with a fourth Wimbledon Cup.
On to your lead story now. This evening, the Chinese geophysical scientific research vessel Xi'an-6, which entered the Sea of Sri Lanka, creating geopolitical tension, conducted research activities today, together with a team from the National Aquatic Resources Research and Development Agency.
The Chinese geophysical scientific research vessel Xi'an-6, which arrived in Colombo on Wednesday, was anchored at the SAJT terminal at the Colombo port today. A research team from the National Aquatic Resources Research and Development Agency joined the Xi'an-6 research vessel today to conduct research activities after receiving permission from the Ministry of Defence. Director General of NMRA Dr. Kamal Tennakun said a team of 4 was assigned to this team. Navy spokesperson Captain Gayan Vikramasuriya said 2 Navy officers will also participate in the research activities of the Chinese research vessel. The vessel is scheduled to leave the port of Colombo tomorrow and commence research activities. The temperature of the seawater, the condition of sea waves, how they affect fish and climate change will be studied during the research. NMRA said samples of different seawater levels will also be tested. The vessel will remain in the Sea of Sri Lanka until Tuesday the 31st of October after receiving permission yesterday to carry out research activities in Sri Lanka's maritime boundary for 2 more days. The Xi'an-6 is equipped with the latest modern technology that can monitor the ocean bed, and it also comprises laboratories to test the samples obtained from the ocean floor. Weighing 260 tons, the Xi'an-6 can accommodate 60 people. The Chinese geophysical scientific research vessel Xi'an-6 made international headlines after Indian and Chinese media expressed contradicting views regarding the vessel and its journey to Sri Lanka. Indian media has directed attention towards permission being granted for the Chinese research vessel Xi'an-6 to remain in Sri Lanka for 2 more days. India's NDTV reported that Sri Lanka has granted 48 hours for a Chinese vessel to conduct marine research off the island's west coast, despite The Republic of Korea Navy destroyer ROKS Kwangetho the Great, which arrived in Colombo on a formal visit, departed the island yesterday. The Sri Lanka Navy bade a customary farewell to the departing ship in accordance with naval traditions at the port of Colombo. On her departure, ROKS Kwangetho the Great conducted a successful passage exercise with SLNS Vijay Bahu. In the PASEX, communication training and tactical maneuvering training exercises were conducted, and it concluded with the customary cheer ship salute. Meanwhile, the commanding officer of ROKS, Kwangetho the Great, Captain Kim Hoang-chol, called on Commander Western Naval Area and Commandant Volunteer Naval Force, Rear Admiral Saman Pereira, at the Western Naval Command headquarters on Thursday. On the sidelines of the ship's visit to Sri Lanka, personnel of the Sri Lanka Navy had the opportunity to visit the ship at the port of Colombo. The Akebono DD-108 destroyer-type ship belonging to the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, which arrived in Sri Lanka yesterday, is currently anchored at the Trincomalee port. According to the Navy, before the ship leaves the island on Tuesday, it will engage in a naval exercise with the Sri Lankan Navy ship in the waters falling under the purview of the Eastern Naval Command in the Sea of Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, 37 Indian fishermen have been arrested and 5 fishing boats were seized for poaching in the Sea of Sri Lanka. Now, the arrest was made during a search operation conducted by the Sri Lanka Navy.
23 Indian fishermen were arrested in the seas of Mannar and 3 fishing boats they were travelling on were seized. The other 14 Indian fishermen were arrested in the Delft Sea. This search operation was conducted in the northern seas of Sri Lanka this morning. The arrested fishermen and seized vessels were brought to the Thalemana jetty and Kankasanture port. A total of 174 Indian fishermen have been arrested so far this year and 27 Indian fishing vessels have been seized. Representatives of the fishing associations in Tamil Nadu who gathered in Rameswaram, Tamil Nadu this afternoon reached a decision to launch an indefinite strike until the Indian fishermen arrested by Sri Lankan authorities are released.
Today we launched an indefinite strike demanding the central government and the state government to intervene to free these fishermen. The fishermen and boats should be released by the 3rd of November. Compensation should be given for the boats that could not be released so far. A permanent solution should be provided for the long-standing India-Sri Lanka fishing issue.
Indian Lok Sabha member Nawaz Khani, who is in Sri Lanka, said he met Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri and discussed the fishing issue. He noted that the Minister of Foreign Affairs promised to expedite the release of the Rameswaram fishermen. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin's sister, Indian Lok Sabha member K. Kanimoli, said India should discuss the fishing issue with Sri Lankan fishermen.
We repeatedly said the central government should work to free the fishermen soon and bring them back to India. A solution to this issue should be found through discussions between the Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu fishermen associations. But these discussions are not taking place now. If we start these discussions again, we can find a solution to this issue.
The All Island General Fisheries Association said the issue of India plundering Sri Lanka's fish resources should be resolved through diplomatic discussions and not through discussions with the fishermen.
Kanimoli said Indian and Sri Lankan fishermen should hold discussions and resolve the issue. Will Sri Lankan authorities work according to what Kanimoli says? This is not a domestic issue, it is a diplomatic issue. The issue cannot be resolved the way the Indian Chief Minister's sister wants. It needs a diplomatic solution. Leaders of the two countries, the foreign ministers, fisheries ministers and defence ministers should intervene to resolve the issue.
Views regarding this were expressed at a media briefing convened by the Samagi Janabalawegya today.
If permission is given for Indian fishermen to enter Sri Lankan waters, we will lose our aquatic resources. This will create a new problem in our country. Also, in attempting to change the Fisheries Act to include provisions to allow Indian fishermen to fish in Sri Lankan waters, what we believe is that this too is an agreement that was reached with Modi. Not only fishermen who are in the north, this issue will affect fishermen across the country. This is unjust and will pave the way for Indian fishermen to plunder our marine resources. That is what is going to happen if they change the Fisheries Act. There is a possibility in the future that our Navy will be unsure if they can arrest foreign fishing boats that enter the Sea of Sri Lanka. Therefore, we believe that Ranil Wickremesinghe and this Pohotua government are changing the legal framework of the country to allow foreigners to acquire all resources of our country. We are strongly against these moves.
වෙනස් කරමින් යන අවස්ථාවක් හැටියට තමයි මේක අපිට පේන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඒ හින්දා අපි මේකට ඉතාම විරුද්ධයි.
On to a headline-making story now. Leader of the Jatika Janabalawegya, Anura Kumara Dissanayake, says that Sri Lanka should adopt a non-aligned foreign policy that does not pledge allegiance to any geopolitical camp. Now, he made this statement while addressing Sri Lankans in Los Angeles in the United States.
No leader
in the world can remain isolated. The world is connected through economies. The world is connected through communication networks. Although there is no official declaration of war, there are power struggles between world powers. There is an economic power struggle between the United States and China. There is a struggle to acquire new markets. There is a struggle between India and China. On the other hand, Russia is rising. There is also the European Union. Sri Lanka does not have the capacity to become a center of power at the moment. but Sri Lanka cannot be prevented from becoming a victim of this power struggle between world powers. Sri Lanka is not erased from the world map when these global powers clash. Then what should our foreign policy be? We should have a foreign policy that is non-aligned and not directly or indirectly linked to any of these global powers, whether we like it or not. We are located within India's sphere of influence. Therefore, when formulating our foreign policy and our economic policy, it is difficult for us to leave India out when we are making decisions. We can say that we are an independent country, just as you are, and we have sovereignty just as you do. That is correct, but the reality is somewhat different. Therefore, we need to take that into consideration when formulating our foreign policy. We need to build our economic policy on that base. What is the economic journey that we started in the 80s? Selling and obtaining loans. Even today, we are selling and getting loans. We need to make a decisive deviation from this. The goods that were there in the supermarket in the 90s are not the same items available today. We need an economic plan to secure the market for even new goods that come into being. When the foreigners came, we had rubber and coconut, and even today we have rubber and coconut. Consequent to us failing to secure the market for these modern goods and ideas, the entire country has stopped moving forward. Even when our leaders are focused on tea, rubber and coconut, we cannot prevent wars in the world. We cannot prevent global economic crises. We don't represent a large proportion of the global economy. There will be economic crises in the world. There could be pandemics. There will be wars. We need to build an economy that could withstand these shocks. Therefore, we need to transform our economy together with our resources, our markets, our management and our technology to suit the modern goods and services in the market. We need an unwavering economy.
නව වෙළඳපොළක් හොයාගන්න බහණ්ඩා සේවා නිෂ්පාදනයට අපි පරිවර්තන විය යුතුයි. නොසැලෙන ආර්ථිකය අපිට අවශ්‍යයි.
South Africa successfully defended their Rugby World Cup title, and any arguments about the most dominant rugby nation on earth can be temporarily laid to rest. Now the Springboks beat the All Blacks 12-11.
The 2023 Rugby World Cup final kicked off at the Stade de France in France following various spectacular performances. The Springboks and the All Blacks entered the stadium amidst the cheers of hundreds of thousands of spectators. One of rugby's best-known traditions, the haka, a ceremonial Maori dance performed by the All Blacks, gave a strong start to the game.
Pango translates. All Blacks next become one with the
This is the second time South Africa and New Zealand have met in a Rugby World Cup final. The Springboks seem to have control when, with Henri Pollard's dead-eyed goal kicking having already given them a 9-3 lead, Sam Cane caught Jess Creel high in the 27th minute.
To continue his 100% kicking rate.
The New Zealand captain was shown a red card on review, and another Pollard penalty left the All Blacks a man down, 9 points behind and in deep trouble. But New Zealand rallied, rode their luck and dragged themselves back into the game.
Okay, that's the one that degree of danger. It's a red card.
Richie Maunga kicked a penalty before the break, and Borden Barrett scooped up a loose ball and slid in after the interval to cut South Africa's lead to 12-11.
A first half full of drama here. Welcome back to Paris. Marcelia gets away from one and another. Marcelia. Bowden Barrett dives in for the All Blacks.
Both teams pushed for a decisive score in an enthralling, lactic-drenched final quarter, but neither found one, with Jordie Barrett missing a long-range 73rd minute penalty and the Springboks clinging on for a third successive one-point victory in the knockout stages.
But it's over! It's over!
Accordingly, South Africa became the first rugby nation to win 4 Men's Rugby World Cups and the second, after opponents New Zealand, to claim back-to-back titles. South Africa remain undefeated in Rugby World Cup finals, and they are the only side ever to get the better of New Zealand in the showpiece match.
Back. Rugby World Cup champions. They stand alone with a 4th Webellis Cup.
Coming back to more news here at home, making headlines as well. Reports are emerging that there will be a change in the top management of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, including members of the Board of Directors and the chairman as well. A senior official at the Ministry of Health says that the change will be done during the coming days.
Allegations of malpractices were mounting against the NMRA regarding the import and distribution of substandard drugs and also the massive data wipe from the government cloud housing the data of the NMRA. President Ranil Wickremesinghe recently appointed Dr. Ramesh Patirana as the Minister of Health against the backdrop of the compounding crisis in the health sector. The President also appointed Kelia Rambukwala, the former Health Minister, as the Minister of Environment.
The most concerning deal of the NMRA is not the immunoglobulin deal. You may remember the data wipe of the NMRA. The first instance where the malpractices of the NMRA was seen is this data wipe from the NMRA. All of these corrupt activities took place in the system that was created after this data wipe. Therefore, we can see that the previous group of thieves are moving out and allowing for a new group of thieves to take control of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority. The government is now looking at removing the CEO of the NMRA, remove the chairman of the NMRA, but they will be removed and people from groups that have allegations against them, especially allegations of being involved in the NMRA data wipe, those who are responsible officials during that time are now going to be the ones replacing these members of the NMRA. This is another conspiracy. They are coming into power to sweep under the carpet the cases against them before these new cases pop up. Therefore, we believe that even though the Minister of Health has changed, the NMRA is looking to resume their malpractices. The Socialist Youth Union and a group of civil activists staged a protest in Gampaha today. Meanwhile, government and semi-government trade unions have planned to stage a series of protests tomorrow.
The protest was held against the repressive actions of the government, including the proposed online safety bill. The protest was held opposite the Gampaha railway station by the Socialist Youth Union and a group of civil activists. The protesters demanded for the relevant bill to be completely withdrawn.
They are trying to quell this protest by suppressing social media. They have some newspapers and media organizations that are in their pockets, but they cannot buy social media for cash. That's why today they are unable to speak up, because the people have woken up. The youth have woken, and that's why today's youth have started asking the right questions, writing and speaking publicly about theft and corruption and even fraud. This is an issue for them. Do not try to amend this and bring it back to the parliament after the 7th. We demand that this be completely withdrawn.
State sector employees have decided to stage trade union actions once again. They are demanding for an allowance or a salary increment of 20,000 rupees in the 2024 budget. A series of island-wide protests have been organized during the lunch hour tomorrow to be staged by many trade unions.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Minister of Finance and the SLPP MPs, including the Rajapakshas who run the government, should decide whether to resolve the issue of the working people by the 13th of November or whether to face massive protests by the working people thereafter.
Rajapaksha Mahathya tulu kandayamat tirane karanna ඕන.
The State Services Trade Unions Collective convened a media briefing today and announced details about their trade union action.
We have organized a protest movement during the lunch hour at all institutions across the country. We are doing this to inform the government that if a concession is not given to these people through the budget proposal, all state and semi-government trade unions have agreed to launch a massive trade union action.
The Ceylon Teachers Union raised concerns regarding the government's actions to suppress the general public at a time when people are protesting as they are being burdened by many issues.
Obviously, we cannot allow this kind of repression. It is completely wrong. There has been no solution to any of the issues in the health, education, transport and power sectors. These problems have intensified to the extent that people cannot survive. How can people deal with this stress? Now the people are expressing their displeasure through peaceful protests. The fact that the government does not allow the people to express their feelings is a loss of freedom of speech. The continuous attacks by the government using the police is a serious issue. We request the general public not to be deterred by these actions.
කිසි ලෙසකින් මේවට සැලෙන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ.
The Electricity Users Association is preparing to march in protest against the electricity tariff hike.
We are prepared to march in protest against this illegal electricity tariff hike, and we invite mass organizations and all political parties to join us. Join us under any banner. We want to show our opposition to this illegal program of the government. So any party or organization can join us. This is the first message to the government, and we will give them 10 days. If this illegal electricity tariff hike is not withdrawn after 10 days, we are ready to march to Colombo from 4 directions. The electricity tariff is unbearable. What are they trying to do? We ask President Ranil Wickremesinghe to issue an order and reverse this. We would like to question the government as to if the supreme law in Sri Lanka today is the Constitution of Sri Lanka or the Constitution of the IMF.
ශ්‍රී ලංකා ආණ්ඩුවේ ආණ්ඩුකම ව්‍යවස්ථාවද නැත්නම් IMF ව්‍යවස්ථාවද කියලා අපි මේ ආණ්ඩුවෙන් අහනවා.
The State Minister of Finance, Ranjit Siambalapitiya, spoke about the property tax that is to be implemented in the future.
A property tax has been discussed during the IMF negotiations. This is a very progressive tax. This will be collected only from the people who are able to pay it. A person's basic properties such as his house and their cars will not fall within this tax bracket. Beyond that, the attention is focused on the property that are held on a large scale. Through this, the income of provincial secretariats will increase. This is very important because the income of provincial secretariats will be directly invested towards the development of the respective areas. Therefore, this is a progressive scheme, but we will not be able to introduce this immediately in a hurry. This will probably be introduced in the year 2025.
Moving on to some other news, a delegation headed by the Managing Director of Operations of the World Bank arrived in the island. The State Minister of Finance, Shankar Mahadevan, has said that the delegation of the World Bank will join the roundtable discussion to be held with the President on the 31st that will be attended by the institutions that provide multilateral financial facilities to Sri Lanka. Now, the progress of the projects in Sri Lanka carried under the assistance of the World Bank will be inspected by the delegation as well. On to some other news now. A meeting was also held today between opposition leaders Sadip Premadasa and Sanjay Wijesekara, the regional director of the United Nations Children's Fund.
As an opposition, we focus very heavily on the health of mothers and children. So, maternal and child health, MCH, is uppermost in our list of priorities in promoting a health agenda for all Sri Lankans. We also have several programs funded by well-wishers and donors aimed at uplifting health standards and educational standards of the people of our country. We also have a much more holistic approach, integrated approach, and a wide-ranging interpretation of human rights. It's not just civic and political rights. We believe in economic rights, social rights, cultural, religious, health, education. It's an all-encompassing approach to rights.
I can see such a you're so familiar with the issues, and it's interesting for me looking at it from a global perspective. You know, you're very conversant with the issues, so we really appreciate you championing them.
Newsfirst with the people.
The mortal remains of Anula Ratnayaka, who was killed in Israel, was brought to her residence in Dalugama today.
The mortal remains of Anula Ratnayaka were brought to her residence in Dalugama this morning.
Everyone who found out about this was saddened by this. Nobody believed it. I couldn't convince my children that this had happened. They continued to believe that their mother is alive, but they have now understood what has happened. I cannot fill the void that has been left. I thank everyone who stood with me during these tough times.
The final rites are scheduled to be observed tomorrow.
On to news now. In the Israel-Hamas conflict, telecommunications are gradually being restored to the Gaza Strip after a communications blackout cut the enclave off from the rest of the world. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has called on the international community to stop Israel's attacks on Gaza and said people trapped in the Palestinian enclave are, quote, facing a war of genocide, unquote, even as the world watches on. He said, quote, our people in the Gaza Strip are facing a war of genocide and massacres committed by the Israeli occupation forces in full view of the entire world, unquote. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said his country's war with Hamas has entered its second stage as Israeli troops and armored vehicles push into Gaza in an expansion of ground operations. In a press conference, Netanyahu told Israelis to prepare for a, quote, long and hard offensive, describing the campaign as the country's, quote, second war of independence since 1948. Netanyahu's comments came as Gaza was under a near-total communications blackout overnight amid intense Israeli bombardment thought to be aimed at clearing the way for troops to push into the enclave. Phone lines and internet connections are slowly returning after more than a day. Netanyahu has apologized for a tweet in which he blamed Israel's security agencies for the failures that led to the 7th of October attack. Netanyahu tweeted that he was not presented with any intelligence of Hamas's attack. He pinned the blame on the army's chief and the head of the Shin Bet for having judged that the armed group was deterred. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, taking to X, formerly known as Twitter, said, quote, I was wrong. The things I said should not have been said, and I apologize for that. I give full backing to all the heads of the security arms, unquote. US Republican presidential candidates, including frontrunner Donald Trump, touted their unwavering support for Israel, wiping out Palestinian Hamas militants yesterday. Trump said, quote, the United States will stand with Israel 100% without hesitation, without qualification, and without any apology. We are not going to be apologizing, unquote, adding he would sanction Iran and crack down on pro-Palestinian protests on US campuses as well. Tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters have marched in London and across the UK towards an end to Israel's attacks in Gaza. Police said around 70,000 people gathered on the streets of the capital holding flags and banners as they demanded an end to the bombing. Since the start of the war, more than 7,700 people in Gaza have been killed, nearly half of them children, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, which is controlled by Hamas. In Israel, at least 1,400 people were killed and 229 people are believed to have been kidnapped into Gaza. On to some other news back here at home. The 14th Asian Criminology Conference 2023 was held in Colombo today.
The 14th Asian Criminology Conference 2023, jointly organized by the Asian Criminology Society and the Faculty of Criminal Justice at the General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University, was held in Colombo today. The event was held under the theme Crime and Criminal Justice, Sustainable Development, Peace and Security in Asia. Vice Chancellor of the Kotalawala Defence University, Rear Admiral H.G.U. Dhammika Kumara, delivered the opening remarks at the event.
Research in criminology and associated areas is of paramount importance for crime prevention with the recent evaporation of novel trends in crime of non-traditional nature. We also need to realize the recent tendency of countries to engage in international crimes. This conference is more than just a meeting. It is a convergence of ideas and expertise aimed at shaping a better future. Our shared vision is to create a world where criminal justice serve as a cornerstone of sustainable development and lasting peace.
Chief Justice Jayanta Jayasuriya was the keynote speaker at the event. He highlighted the importance of coexistence in a society.
Crime, criminal justice, sustainable development, peace and security have a great impact on the lives of all of us, irrespective of our individual status, professions, or occupations that we are engaged in. There is no doubt coexistence is the key to progress of a society. Mutual respect, altruism, and tolerance are few qualities that would foster an environment of coexistence. The responsibility of maintaining law and order in a society rests with the state.
Professor at the Faculty of Law at the University of Macau in China, Zhang Hongliu was the guest speaker at the event.
A famous idea is colonization. See, Western theory colonized the colonies. Therefore, what we need to do as criminologists is to decolonize. We focus on Asia and we contribute and gradually form this concept called Asian paradigm. Okay. The Asian paradigm is try to summarize, to build a framework with basic concepts, basic approach, and institutionalization to form such a growing force and establishment about Asian criminology. Okay.
Criminologists, researchers, and scholars from across the world attended the event.
Now, today marks a century since the establishment of the Turkish Republic. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government has opted for a low-key celebration of the centennial, which comes months after a devastating earthquake that killed 50,000 people and coincides with the Israeli-Hamas war that has roiled the Middle East. The Turkey ambassador to Sri Lanka on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the proclamation of the Republic of Turkey issued the following statement.
Today marks a monumental milestone in the history of modern Turkey as we proudly celebrate 100 years of resilience, progress and unity that echo the invincible spirit of our nation. On this auspicious occasion, as the ambassador of the Republic of Turkey to Sri Lanka and Maldives, I extend warm and heartfelt congratulations to our citizens, both at home and abroad, as we come together to commemorate the centennial of the proclamation of the Republic. A century ago, doors of a new era were unveiled, symbolizing Turkey's relentless struggle for freedom while paving the path for a golden chapter for our Republic.
Indian legendary singer Shankar Mahadevan took Sri Lanka by storm today at the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium in Colombo. Sri Lanka's premier Tamil TV channel Shakti TV and Shakti FM are the main media sponsors for the event.
The legend Shankar Mahadevan, live in concert of India's famous singer Shankar Mahadevan, began at 6:30 p.m. today at the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium, Colombo.
Thank you so much for joining us.
A massive crowd gathered at the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium in Colombo for this extravagant concert and to be serenaded by the voice of Shankar Mahadevan. This grand concert, organized by R Entertainment, featured the likes of many other South Indian singers. Sri Lanka's premier Tamil stations, Shakti TV and Shakti FM, are the main media sponsors. The concert will be held under the media patronage of M Entertainment.
More news comes your way with the corporate brief.
A brand new studio was unveiled in Colombo yesterday to mark the 6th anniversary of Kingsman Studio. The event marked an evening of bespoke luxury, exquisite craftsmanship and the commemoration of tailored excellence. Various luxurious clothing items, including blazers, ties and cufflinks, were displayed at the opening night.
We move on to some tragic news overseas. At least one person was killed and 56 injured in a series of blasts at a convention center in Kerala's Kalamassery today. At least 3 blasts were reported within minutes after the prayer meeting started. The incident took place during a Jehovah's Witnesses convention at the center in Kalamassery, about 10 kilometers from Kochi. The prayer meet was attended by nearly 2,000 people. Police said 56 injured persons were undergoing treatment in various hospitals in the district, of which 18 people are in the ICU. 6 persons injured in the blast are in critical condition. The blasts are being probed by the National Investigations Agency. The agency's forensic team has already reached the scene of crime and is collecting evidence.
The official ICC Men's Cricket World Cup India 2023.
India took on England in the 29th match of the ICC Cricket World Cup 2023 in Lucknow, India. Now, cricket fans can watch and listen to all the action of the World Cup via the MTV MBC networks, the official local broadcast rights holder of the tournament. Now, the matches are also being streamed live on www.sirasatv.lk. That's a wrap of Primetime News. Here with me tonight, bringing you the news from the news desk for one last time. This is Sandro Satyajit signing off. Goodbye.